Welcome to the First Things First podcast. And first things first, we need you to subscribe and leave comments, letting us know what you think of the show. We're listening. I'm Nick Wright, joined by two of my favorite people, Jenna Wolfe, Chris Carter. Now, let's get the show started.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to First Things First. Alongside the Hall of Famer Chris Carter and my guy Nick Wright over here, I'm Jenna Wolfe. Happy Friday. We made it. It's all good. You know how, first of all, I have two sick kids at home, this is going to be a tremendous 3 hours.
Jenna.
If you'd like to extend it so I can stay here most of the day, that would be great. But listen, look what I just read this morning right before I came on set. You guys make fun of me for my bone broth every morning. Guess who swears by bone broth every single morning?
Tom Brady.
Okay, well, the conversation just got real short. But yes,
am I right?
You are correct.
Wow.
Tom Brady with the bone broth. So I'd like to think in many ways we are identical in athletic prowess and sporting success.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to start with a latte. Let's do this.
Okay. All right. Well, let's start with the latte. Depending on how you look at it, the Super Bowl, as we just discussed, is either right around the corner or it is an endless wait. Just ask Eagles head coach Doug Peterson, who was getting asked constantly about tackling the beast that is the New England Patriots. But can you blame the barrage of questions? Bill Belichick and Tom Brady have won 5 Super Bowls together. Doug Peterson and Nick Foles, not nearly as many. Also none. Doug Peterson was asked if he has to make sure his team isn't in awe of the Patriots' mystique come next Sunday.
If I make this all about them, we're in trouble. Honestly, we're in trouble. And it's everything's going to be written about it. Everything has been written about it, talked about it, discussed, debated, and it's about us. And I'll keep saying that. It's what we do and how well we execute, and I can't worry about that.
All right, so CeCe, let me ask you, as a group of guys get ready to face this behemoth that is the New England Patriots, how big of a factor is the Patriots' mystique?
It's a factor, but as a player, it's a lot simpler from a management standpoint, coaching standpoint. Just leave it to the X's and O's. Besides trying to describe all the extra things that go around the Super Bowl, the things that you have to inform the players about. Yeah. Now, is there a tremendous edge? I would say edge over mystique because they've done it so many times. So they know the number of distractions. They know how to go about it. They know the hotel situation. Actually, the last Super Bowl that New England lost, or the last couple, there have been some transportation issues, some hotel issues. I know that in talking to some of the former players. So there's a lot of things around Super Bowl you still can't control. So for me, the mystique, I've played against great teams and great organizations before. I played against the 49ers when they had Joe Montana.
Yeah.
I played against the Triplets in Dallas when they had. So it's always the good teams. They do have some type of mystique. They end up winning more, but it's about the X's and O's. As Doug Peterson said, just put the film on. You don't put the Super Bowl film on. You put the same defense that we saw people get a bunch of yards on. Put the same defense on that shuts people down in the red zone. We know about the offense. We know the special teams are very, very solid. So you're not playing against a mystique. You're playing against this year's New England Patriots. And as long as Doug Peterson and the Eagles organization keep it as that, it won't seem as if it's a task that can't be completed. It won't seem as daunting as the public and the media, people like us, will put it out to be. Because it's still a game of 60 minutes. It's still their players on the field. New England still doesn't have a dynamic running attack. Rob Gronkowski does have a concussion today. They can
Brady's
be beaten.
hand is still hurting. Yeah.
So there's still a lot of things that Doug, he has to make sure the team is focused on what they're doing and preparing against this year's New England Patriots compared to going against history.
And one thing that the Eagles have in their favor from a historical perspective is in one of the biggest anomalies that I can think of in recent sports history. The Pats have never scored with Brady and Belichick in the first quarter of a Super Bowl. 0 points in their 7 Super Bowls in the first quarter. Why does that matter? Well, you got to imagine a team like the Eagles, such as the Eagles, that has almost no Super Bowl experience, only 7 combined games played in the Super Bowl, 3 of those by former Patriots for the Eagles roster, that you would be worried about coming out with butterflies, coming out with nerves. And at least in the Patriots' recent and distant Super Bowl history in this era, they're not up 7-0, 10-0 after the first quarter. If you've been playing Super Bowl squares the years Patriots have been in the Super Bowl, you've needed a 0 in your squares game to be able to win it because they've never scored in the first quarter.
So it also lets you know it's a distraction to them.
That is exactly the point I was hoping to get to, is that it's no team really that we've seen does well definitely with the entire Super Bowl experience right to begin with. It's similar to me what you see with like some of the college bowl games early on where it looks like, man, these guys look rusty. It's not that these teams necessarily are going to look rusty. It's that there's a lot there. And what you don't want to do is lose the game early with a big mistake. So even a team like the Pats that's been incredibly successful, obviously, over the last 15 years, they don't necessarily pull out all the stops early. What they don't want to do is be in a position, as they ended up being in last year, actually, where they're down huge early.
But that's part of the lore that is this Patriots mystique, is that it doesn't matter what situation you get them in. If this team had no history, this Patriots team of these, like, mounting these double-digit comebacks in the fourth quarter, then you say, okay, we have a shot. But there's no position that the Eagles can say, this is when we're going to be safe in the game, or if we just do this, I feel like we have an advantage. The last 4 games that the Patriots played that they were down double digits, I think it was 4, they won all 4 games. They know how to do it. Tom Brady's the best at it. So I think that seemingly, from my perspective, is what sort of plays into this mystique that is the Patriots. There's no position that the Eagles could come from where they feel like a lead is safe at any time.
Well, you're not preparing against that. The one thing that as football players and as athletes that you do, when you put the film in, you see they're human. They're not big and powerful. They got a small offensive line. Outside of Tom Brady, if Gronk's hurt on the offense, like, they don't overwhelm you on tape. So it's not as if Nick Foles is looking at tape and when he sees New England, he sees all these comebacks. That's not involved in their preparation.
What are they showing you in tape? Are they showing you all the things that the Patriots don't do well? Okay. Okay.
I mean, there's a reason why they've given up all these yards. There's a reason why they don't have much team speed.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason why they don't have a lot of interceptions. They don't have a bunch of sacks. In the regular season, they've ramped it up in the playoffs. But look, the video doesn't lie.
I'm certain the Eagles as a whole think they're better. Like, I want to get that.
I'm sure the defensive line and Jim Schwartz, they go into this game with a lot of confidence.
Right. Okay, so that's maybe a softer way or maybe a gentler way of saying the point I'm trying to make, which is I think the Eagles, they are able to tell themselves, listen, we lost our damn quarterback. We're 15-3. They got the greatest quarterback ever. They're 15-3. We must be. We've got a second-year head coach. They got the greatest coach ever. We got the same record. We played in the far more difficult conference. Our path to the Super Bowl was not Marcus Mariota and Blake Bortles. It was Matt Ryan followed by a Vikings team that, by the way, was also 13-3 in the regular season. Like, I think the Eagles, it's not false bravado or false confidence.
Oh, not at all.
I think they truly can believe we are the better team.
One thing, I'm certain this has happened, and I'm not telling you a source. I'm just telling you football, it's a small world, and we're a family. Doug Peterson is getting so much information from Andy Reid. Watch the first game of the season. I guarantee you that the Philadelphia Eagles will run a lot of the same plays that Kansas City ran in week number 1. Last time the Eagles were in the Super Bowl, who was their coach?
Andy Reid.
Oh, who'd they play against?
New England Patriots.
All right. Weren't the Eagles fairly successful in that football game?
Absolutely.
And I'm sure that Andy Reid, as a mentor to Doug Peterson in this week, he is going to be 24-hour access for Doug. So you're not necessarily going against. He's got people telling him, listen, you can win this game. And when you look at the tape, it's not as if New England, this team is going to just overwhelm you when you see them physically on tape. And let's be honest. I believe Nick Foles is a better quarterback right now and has better personnel than Tennessee in the divisional round and Jacksonville in the conference championship. So there's a certain amount of confidence they can approach this game with, Nick.
Welcome back to First Things First. Mark Schlereth is here with us. Hey, Mark.
Hi, guys.
You have a good birthday yesterday?
I did have a good birthday, yes.
Good.
Yes.
Good. Glad you're still here with us.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
This is the time, Mark, in the show when we talk about the difference between the Eagles and the Patriots. Both teams started this season in September. Both teams have a 53-man roster, and both teams have the 53-man roster. That's about where the similarities end. So how did this Eagles team get here with a second-year head coach, a backup quarterback, and a few off-season pickups? Pro Bowl safety Malcom Jenkins has an idea.
The leadership and quality of guys we brought in this offseason is invaluable. Between, Patrick Robinson, who bet on himself this year and took a minimum deal just to come play for the Eagles, seeing that the locker room was a good locker room. Alshon, could have went anywhere and decided to come here. Torrey, Chris, LeGarrette, all of these guys are huge, contributors on this team, all of which are big names in this league and could have been anywhere. But they decided to come here, and it's been a huge part of how we've been able to take the foundation that we built last year and really outfit it to become, top team in this league.
Mark, do the Eagles get enough credit for how good this roster is, really, from top to bottom?
No, they don't. And I've said it, well, as soon as people have started asking me. I think they're a better roster than New England. I don't think you can argue that top to bottom, they have a better roster. Now, they've had some injuries, and they're playing with a backup quarterback, but they're a talented roster. And then to listen to Malcom Jenkins talk about the quality of the locker room, you start thinking about you're LeGarrette Blount, and you're there, and all of a sudden you're running with Jay Ajayi, and you've got to trade those reps and to be able to play for one another, not to be greedy that way, but to be able to sacrifice for one another, play for one another. It does show you what kind of locker room they actually have. But, yeah, they're an exceptionally talented roster. It's just that you're playing with a backup quarterback and everybody goes, oh,
right.
It's Nick Foles. And Nick Foles, in the right system, what Doug Peterson has put him in there, you've seen, what he's capable of doing. And he showed it years ago when he was with Chip Kelly.
And it's what you can really look at is this offseason and last offseason, the additions they made. I know everyone focused on what they drafted Carson Wentz, guy from North Dakota State at number 2 overall, is like the key moment. But this offseason, he mentions adding Patrick Robinson. You had Alshon Jeffrey and Torrey Smith. You by the way, Nick Foles wasn't on the team. They brought him in. They decided to let Chase Daniels, their backup quarterback, go. They bring in Nick Foles. You mentioned LeGarrette Blount and Jay Ajayi, 2 guys that were not on the team last year. Jay Ajayi wasn't even on the team at midseason. And then on defense, of not as many additions, but a few key additions, most notably Timmy Jernigan and Ronald Darby. Like, you saw this team all of a sudden.
Those are both trades, yes.
Yeah, but they were acquisitions, right?
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
From this offseason, guys, and the Timmy Jernigan trade, they just gave up like 25 spots in the draft to get Ronald Darby. They gave up Jordan Matthews, and in addition to a draft pick, I believe. But what you saw, Howie Roseman, who's been with Philly forever, but had kind of his power taken from him when Chip Kelly was there. Once he reasserted control, looking at the team this offseason, he clearly believed they were closer than I thought they were, so we're going to add some veterans. We're going to add some key pieces on offense to help our quarterback, some key pieces on defense like Timmy Jernigan, where we're already good. And that's how you have a roster that you're saying is, man-to-man against the Patriots, the better of the 2 rosters. Like, it's a testament to how they built this football team.
Yeah, I thought it was a great roster. I thought that they had unbelievable depth. I thought that their attack on defense and offense, it matched their personnel. I think that, Howie Roseman, he won't get enough credit for what he's done. Also, you have a first-time head coach. When you're making trades, when you're bringing deals to the coach, you want the coach to focus on the personnel and how they're going to play, teaching the game and what's the right tack. Man, you got a guy in the front office that's getting you the right type of players. As Bill Parcells said, he wanted to pick the groceries. But as a young coach, you don't need to pick the groceries. You need someone you trust, someone you feel connected to, that you can play and think alike, that he's going to acquire the same type of players that are going to play. And also, which I think people miss, is the locker room, the veterans, and the type of human beings. Look at Chris Long. Look at Malcom Jenkins. Look at some of the things that these guys stand for. When most of these teams are very, very young, you need some stand-up old veterans to be in that locker room to they give you a championship mentality. People are like, well, Chris Long, he's only with New England. But, man, he knows what it's like to win. He knows what it's like to prepare and to keep guys on an even keel every day. It's vital to have older guys that have been through NFL battles, and they have done a tremendous job in Philadelphia as far as the last 2 years since Howie has taken back over, gained control of that roster. That's the result. No, we give them they're in the Super Bowl.
Right.
People are like, do you give them enough credit? They're in the Super Bowl. I mean, what do you want us to do?
I think you make it a good point, and you piggybacked off that. The reason that people, I think, don't give them enough credit is because their quarterback, the face of this team right now, is Nick Foles, who people have a lot of questions surrounding. So my question then was going to be, with this team, who's the leader? There's not, I mean, is it a Malcom Jenkins? Like, who's the guy in the locker room that stands up when Doug Peterson walks out and says, okay, this is what's going to... Is there a guy... Do they have a guy like that on this team?
They have some very good video on NFL.com. If you watch Malcom Jenkins, you see him talking and everything. But I think sometimes that's overstated. You don't... Because you got a pack. You got 53, 60 guys. There is no one guy that can galvanize the whole team. So even like in New England, Tom Brady's not getting up yelling at the offense and the defense. Now, he talks to the offense. So sometime when you have group leaders, you have veterans sprinkled in and out the locker room. In the offensive line, they got Jason Peters. Yep. Carson Wentz now is running the specialty guys. Right. Alshon Jeffries, they got him. His leadership being unselfish, which allows Nelson Aguilar to move to his natural spot in the slot. When you see that guys buying in, those are the types of things that speak louder than some guy in the locker room standing up saying, hey, guys, we're getting ready to do this.
Right. I think one of the big things with championship organizations, and you look at Philly, both lines of scrimmage, that's where the majority.
Offensive and defensive line.
That's where their guys are. Whether it's a Jason Kelsey, you mentioned Peters, who's hurt now, but Lane Johnson and Brooks has played great at the right guard position.
Wanuski, who they brought in.
Yes. So, I mean, you've got guys there that control the tempo. And, it's interesting at practice. If you can't control the tempo in the trenches, nobody gets to have a very good practice. It gets bogged down. You can't execute. Your quarterback's under duress and the timing of the routes. So I think you look at both lines of scrimmage with the offensive line, with a guy like Fletcher Cox, with Curry, with Jernigan, with all those guys they have. That's what sets the tempo. They've got a bunch of dudes that go out there and grind. And that's a great tempo setter. And when you have that on a football team, your football team is going to be pretty good.
Well, and to piggyback off what Chris said, because the NFL teams, the locker rooms are broken down so often into the positional groups where you have your meetings with, it's who you work with. What the Eagles have done, and I don't know if this is by good planning or by good luck, they've got what appears to be a strong veteran voice at each positional group. Like Malcom Jenkins talked about how good of a leader Torrey Smith has been. So there's your wide receivers. You mentioned LeGarrette Blount, who has Super Bowl experience. There's your running backs taken care of. The offensive line, you can almost take your pick. Jason Peters was clearly the guy, and you guys saw what a rallying force he was for the team. The game he got injured, when the entire team came out onto the field for him. On the other side of the ball, defensive line, Fletcher Cox, one of the best in the world at what he does. In the secondary, Malcom Jenkins, who we're talking about. So you've got a guy that can be the strong voice in each of those, with each of those positional groups, which is, to me, maybe more important than just one strong voice for the whole team.
Yeah, and let's not forget Lane Johnson, a friend of the show, what he said on this show. We're going to take it away from the pretty boy. They're going to take it to him. And when you have good, big people, I just believe people don't know NFL rosters. That's why they don't give them any credit. They don't know actually what's on Philadelphia. And when your offense and defensive lines are good, a lot of times people don't know because it's not sexy. It's not the quarterback. It's not the wide receivers. It's not the running back. So Philadelphia, top to bottom, 1-53, they're really good. The reason why they might not get enough credit is because Tom Brady is the number one on the other team.
Right. Good point. All right, finally to the NFL now. Drew Brees is a free agent, but don't expect him to test the market. According to a report, Brees said emphatically, I'm not going anywhere. Stink, would it be a smart move for the Saints to sign the 39-year-old to a big deal? And by big, I guess I mean longer than a year?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he hasn't sloughed off at all. It's never been about his arm strength. It's been from the neck up is what sets him apart. And the guy, I mean, obviously with the running game that they have right now, the efficiency that he played with last year, you look at that football team and finally, I mean, he went through the tough times. He went through the 3 years where you're trying to get out of salary cap purgatory and trying to revamp your defense. They're there now. They're an outstanding football team. Can he play another 3, 4, 5 years? Yeah, at least 3 real efficient years. I don't think there's any reason to think that he's gonna drop off. So would I sign him? Yeah. I mean, you've got to make it fit, but absolutely.
And this is the least amount of work that Drew Brees, since the Drew Brees New Orleans, because he's different than the Drew Brees of the San Diego Chargers. Since he injured his shoulder, I mean, he is a throwing machine. I know Tom Brady, people talk about the regiment and everything he has, but I'm telling you, Drew Brees would, man, be right there as far as a regimented guy, what he's doing, taking care of his body. I mean, he is an amazing, he's talking about a guy 5'11". 6 foot. Like, yeah, they should sign him for a 3 or 4 year deal. I believe he's going to play 3 years. And this is the least amount of work that he's had to do. He's got 2 running backs that are Pro Bowlers. He's got 2 young wide receivers. Like, man, they can run the ball. Drew Brees can take some afternoons off. Like, yes, they should. Drew Brees is playing at a high level.
Not to mention, he's comfortable. He lives there. His family's there. The city loves him.
He's not going.
That's other people that always want you to lose your happiness.
Right.
Because they do better at telling you what to do than they do at their own life. Drew Brees and what his wife are doing in the community in New Orleans, he's a part of that community. Yeah. He brought them their only Super Bowl. He is a part of the folklore in New Orleans.
And speaking of the Super Bowl, like, to me, this is a no-brainer. If not for the Minneapolis Miracle, we could very well be talking about a Patriots-Saints Super Bowl with 2 of the best quarterbacks of their eras. And Brees this year, I know he's 39, and I have a well-documented history of being skeptical of older quarterbacks. However, Drew Brees this year was above his career average in completion percentage, yards per attempt, touchdown to interception ratio, and quarterback rating. He set the all-time NFL record for completion percentage this year, right? Like, I mean, he's showing no drop-off.
So the question is, what do the 40-year-olds, Drew Brees, soon to be 40, and Tom Brady, don't have to answer now. What do they have to do for you to change
They might have already done it. That might be the answer. The answer might have been what I saw from 40-year-old Tom Brady this year and 39-year-old Drew Brees this year. Now there is a history of it. There had been no history of quarterbacks that age being successful. Now there's a history of 2 guys doing it, plus Brady last year. So my opinion might have already changed.
Next year, we're really going to mess with him with 50-year-old quarterbacks. And then we'll start this all over
It may have changed already. New information, you've changed your opinion.
Yeah.
I like it.
It's something I've been trying to teach CC for 6 months now.
Speaking of 40-year-old quarterbacks.
Yeah, that's what we're going to do, change my opinion.
Moving on to Tom Brady, who spent his time last week answering questions about his banged-up thumb, then went out and beat the Jags. This week, he will apparently spend his time answering questions about his banged-up thumb, so he can hopefully go out and beat the Birds. But that's what happens when you're limited in practice leading up to the Super Bowl, because if you got one hand in your pocket and the other one's giving a high five. Limited practice for Brady seems to indicate that hand injury still hasn't gone away. Stink. Alanis Morissette reference. Nobody laughed. I get that.
I didn't get it. Sorry.
I know you didn't. Because I didn't wrap it out. I just said it straight. Do we have any reason to worry here about Tom Brady's hand?
Well, first off, you were incorrect in your lead-in because he didn't spend any time answering the question. He spent a bunch of time avoiding the question.
Right.
He was being asked the question. He did not answer the question. No, I mean, here's the deal. You got 2 weeks between the Super Bowl. I mean, I would expect him to play at this point. I would expect him to take a little bit of time and to roll into that. So that's not a concern whatsoever. The hand's not going to be a concern. If he played last week, he'll be fine. Come Super Bowl week, he'll get the stitches out. I think that's a non-issue. The thumb is going to be a non-issue.
It would be an issue if it was the Bud Grant Vikings. If they were playing in Met Stadium outside. All right? Like if it was sub-zero. Like it might be an issue as far as overall feeling. But no, what he did last week, no, of course it's not going to be an issue. Also, Tom Brady and his dealings with the Super Bowl and their media, he's going to be able to handle that better because he's got so much experience at it. What he did last week should be evidence enough. But we, as broadcasters, journalists, we will continue to ask the question. He should have proven a lot of his doubters wrong after last week's performance.
And you're not concerned about the limited practice, because usually he's a big practice guy. So the fact that he wasn't 100%.
No, there were a bunch of guys that were limited yesterday.
It's the added part because it's the week off. Like if the game were Sunday and he's limited in practice on Thursday.
I still wouldn't be concerned. No, he was limited last week and carved him up.
Right, but last week that is what for you raised some alarm bells for you was because he wasn't practicing.
Tom Brady went for a handoff. He's got 15 stitches in his hands. Yeah, alarm. Five alarm. Get out the house. Right. Yes, absolutely.
And so the point that I was trying to make is that if the game were Sunday, he wouldn't have been as limited in practice. I don't believe. I think this was extra precautionary.
What you're doing right now is you're managing your roster.
Right.
That's what you're doing. And you're saying, hey, listen, how important is practice this week when we're going to go through the whole so you'll put your game plan in, and you'll work on it Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, then you'll take it to the Super Bowl and you'll do the same exact reps, the same exact game plan Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So now you're juggling, or you're looking at the juxtaposition of how important is practice and going through it this week versus rest and getting our guys well. And you're looking at guys like me. This week I wouldn't have practiced, or I'd have taken very limited reps. Hey, we need you on this particular blitz. Hey, Stink, we need you to run this particular play action fake that we want to run.
Yes.
But these are every day it may be 3 or 4 plays. I want you in this play. I want you in this play. My O-line coach will say this play, this play, this play. The rest of the week, we want you to get your legs right. Because when we hit Super Bowl site, we want you humming, and we want you ready to play. And so right now it's this battle of attrition that is the National Football League season. And they've got guys beat up, and you want to give them some rest, especially your older players. You got to get their legs fresh.
But I do think this is an opportunity for us to revisit exactly what happened this last Sunday. Because, Chris, you brought it up Monday, and then there's a lot of things going on. There's new stories. There's all this NBA drama. And I don't really know if it got the full attention it deserved, which was, and it's odd to say, but the extreme, unique pressure Brady particularly was under on Sunday. Because Wednesday, he's going for a handoff, as you mentioned, cuts his hand open. It ends up with, 12, 15 stitches in his throwing hand.
Yes.
There is the story surrounding the team that the reason they don't have the best backup quarterback in the league is because Brady didn't want him there. Enough to which the owner, before the game, says, we're going to be fine as long as everyone's ego is in check. If during that football game Brady had played terribly, or if during that football game that the tape hadn't held and all of a sudden the stitches bust open and Brian Hoyer's out there taking snaps, think about what we were talking about Monday. Is this the greatest athlete in the history of athletes? Obviously the greatest quarterback ever. Maybe the greatest football player. That was discussion Monday. If this goes the other way for him, it's not only are we not having that discussion, we're talking about, wait, did Brady's ego cost the Pats a chance to go to another Super Bowl? Brady a chance to win another one? And the pressure that was almost self-inflicted and then exacerbated by the injury. You mentioned it Monday. I don't think we spent enough time on it because when you look back on it, it's really remarkable how this thing ended up turning out for him and for the team.
Yes, and the stitch, the actual injury, the stitching, you want it to harden. You don't want it to reopen. So why jeopardize, take that? It would be almost like they were last week if they reopened the cut. They would have to stitch him back up, and he would have to go through the healing process again. So it doesn't make sense because one bad snap or throwing the laces, just let it heal. He proved to us last week that the injury wasn't significant. It wasn't high enough on his thumb to affect his throwing. So, no, let it heal. Be smart about it.
Yeah. No, you have to let it heal. You have to be smart about it. And I'll tell you one thing that's really interesting to me as we go into this Super Bowl, the pressure squarely, in my mind, on the New England Patriots.
How come?
Everybody sits there and says, oh, Nick Foles. No, Nick Foles. Listen, I've played 3 Super Bowls. 2 of them, we were 7, 8-point favorites. I got done with playing in those games. I felt nothing but relief. The pressure of the week being the favorite and knowing what's at stake, one with the Redskins and one with the Broncos. It was not, the week was fun preparing, but the game was relief.
And you guys were big underdogs in your first Super Bowl with the Broncos, right?
First Super Bowl, we were 13-point underdogs to kick off, or to start the week, 11.5 at kickoff. And that, honestly, it felt like playing on house money. It just was like nobody expects us to be here. Nobody expects us to win. Let's go out here and shock the world and prove to them. I didn't feel any pressure. I felt pure joy and just this euphoric feeling after we won that game. And a completely different mindset from those two. So to me, pressure all on the New England Patriots. This is about legacy and about history and about 8 championships, 8 times at the Super Bowl and trying to win your 6th championship. I mean, that to me is pressure. What the Eagles? The Eagles fly, Eagle fly. Put the dog mask on. Let's go out and play. I mean, it's a completely different scenario here.
Yeah, in '99 too, you got that miracle too. Atlanta ended up beating us, so you guys, you wouldn't have been no favorite.
Yeah, you know what?
I right, the Warriors beat the Timberwolves 126-113 last night. Pretty impressive. Even more impressive, how about Durant, Steph, and Klay combining to shoot 18 of 27 from three? That's about twice as many as you're supposed to hit. Nick, are the Warriors unstoppable when they shoot like this?
I would say any team is unstoppable when they shoot like that. The issue is the Warriors are by far the most likely team to shoot like that in a given night. All three of their stars, 25-plus points. That had only happened 4 times in their year and a half together.
Watch how many open shots they shoot, though. Watch, so somebody gets double-teamed. What? That's Steph, wide open. That's Durant, wide open. That's Klay, wide open. Their ball movement and the way they play makes it really special.
Absolutely. It's why they have more 40-assist games than essentially the rest of the league combined. What I was saying is those 3 guys each going for 25, it only happened 4 times as of 3 weeks ago. It's happened twice in the last 3 weeks. When that happens, they can't be beaten.
Finally, the NBA All-Star teams were announced last night. LeBron James drafted Kevin Durant, Anthony Davis, Boogie Cousins, and his former teammate Kyrie Irving in his starting lineup. While Steph will start alongside Giannis, DeMar DeRozan, Joel Embiid, and James Harden. Nick, who drafted the better team?
I mean, LeBron's team's going to be probably a 8-point favorite when Vegas sets the line on this. I think LeBron, if I'm doing the math right on this, I think LeBron took advantage of the fact not only they had the number 1 pick so he could get the best player available in Durant, but also I think he banked on the fact that Curry would bet what I bet, which is that LeBron wouldn't draft Kyrie. Because Curry either drafted DeMar DeRozan or Joel Embiid before Kyrie Irving. That doesn't make a ton of sense. And you might be like, oh, he already had a point guard. Well, it's the All-Star team. Like, that doesn't really matter. I think Curry thought he was going to be able to take Kyrie at the end of the starting draft. He wasn't. And then LeBron added to his team by Curry drafted his teammate Klay Thompson early, which allowed LeBron to get the best by far of all the reserves, Russell Westbrook. So LeBron's team is the favorite, is the better team here. I don't even think that's like an argument.
You didn't overthink it at all, so that's good.
I try to be thoughtful. You ask me questions on television.
Jenna, come on. You know how this goes. If LeBron would have drafted both of you got small kids. If he had drafted the kids that they play with in recess, Nick somehow would make some type of case that Vegas would make them the favorite, and somehow that we should
right?
It's an All-Star game.
Right.
Wait, hold on a second.
Like I put it up on the whiteboard, and this is the rotation.
It's an 8-point. LeBron's team's favored by 8 points. Really?
Will Vegas set a line, Chris?
Yes, they will.
Who's going to be the favorite?
I don't know, but an idiot whoever bets on it.
Okay, that's fine, but that's not the question. Jenna asked us who the better team was. I wanted to give.
That was before I couldn't tell her I didn't know, because I don't know who's going to play hard. Like I don't know that. Like when you watch an All-Star team, like you don't know who's going to be the best. Like me trying to figure that out. I think they did a great job. I wish they would have telecast the whole thing. That to me would be more exciting than everything else.
Than the game itself.
Yeah, like I don't know. Like, am I interested more in watching this All-Star game than the ones in the past? No, not necessarily, because they don't play hard. They don't play any defense. So I don't see either team.
You would have watched them draft if they televised the draft.
Yes, I would have watched that.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you have a guess? Who do you think were the last picks for each team? Because that's the whole reason they didn't televise it.
Right.
The whole reason they didn't televise it was because they thought it was going to be embarrassing for somebody.
Yeah, it's going to be so embarrassing. The last guy, you're number 22 in the world.
Right.
Oh, my God. I'm so sorry. You know something? We're not going to do this on TV because you're only the 22nd best player in the world. Like,
they got to do what they did with the NHL, which is they promised the last guy drafted a new car, so everybody wanted to be the last guy drafted.
Jenna, I'm going to do a payroll right here. That's the last thing one of these need is a new car.
Yeah,
they need a new car like I need a binky.
That is a good question. Who on this list, does anyone on this list not have $100 million?
Oh, my gosh.
I mean, I think the
That's more
question is no.
We should have done the whole salaries.
I'd like a car.
Points.
Back to the NFL. The Dallas Cowboys are home watching the Super Bowl for the 22nd straight year. They are coming off a disappointing season where they finished 9-7 and missed the playoffs. One player who took a step back is quarterback Dak Prescott. Jerry Jones believes they need to find a way to make him more comfortable next year.
We need to take advantage of what we have in Dak. A part of that will be expanding the playbook and expanding not to be trite, but really becoming more problematic for defenses.
All right, so what do you think, Cece? Should the Cowboys change their whole offense to help Dak Prescott?
No, Jerry didn't say that. What he's talking about is the same thing they did with Jared Goff. When they got Sean McVay as a new coach, his teaching of the quarterback position, he added more volumes to the playbook compared to what they were doing in his first year. As a young player, no different than Tom Brady, what they do now in New England is totally different than what they used to. This is the way you groom young quarterbacks. You add volumes to an already very, very successful playbook. So the conversation is not how do we change it, it's how do we make it better. And there's a couple ways that they can get better on offense if they want to be able to help Dak out. They have to add more speed to the team. All right, so when you watch Dallas, they are a powerful football team, and they are all north and south. That means they are all vertical. They don't do anything horizontally, and they don't do anything to challenge the defense horizontally. So Jerry mentioned that. How can we challenge the defense? Another way is speed-wise. Their tight end, Jason Witten, God bless his soul. We got to put him out to pasture. I need someone who can run in the middle of the football field, and I need someone on the outside. They don't have a lot of perimeter speed. So if they're going to add volume to that offense, they're also going to have to do some things where they can run pass options with Dak, where they can throw quick slants the same way Philadelphia did with Nick Foles that got them through the Minnesota game. But you got to be able to throw the ball deep down the field, and you have to have some perimeter speed. And they don't have that right now.
I'm more interested in what Dak is next year than almost any player in the league. Like, there is not more. I can't think of many guys. I guess Carson Wentz coming off his injury, Deshaun Watson coming off his injury.
Yeah, there's some other players, yeah.
The Rodgers, I feel like I know what he's going to be.
Carson Wentz.
I mentioned him. Carson Wentz and two guys who are coming off injuries, of course. But guys that finished the year healthy. I can't think of many guys where there's a bigger, wider range of possible outcomes. Like, is it on the board that Dak is a better version of his rookie year, that they get him a dynamic weapon, that he's not as dead set on trying to create a relationship with Dez that doesn't exist, and that with Zeke there all year, he looks even better than he did in his record-setting rookie year? Absolutely. Is it also on the board, to me, that we, by the midway point of next year, look at Dak and say, man, that rookie year was the aberration. Like, there's a reason he was a fourth-round pick. There's a reason that his second year, not only did he not take a step forward, he took a step backwards. And it wasn't just because Ezekiel Elliott was suspended and they were missing the left tackle for a little bit. So I do think the Cowboys are in prime position, assuming they have a franchise quarterback on a rookie salary. And so that's what we're going to find out this year, that we know he's on a rookie salary. We know he's their quarterback. They're not going to have some type of backup plan. He's their guy. Right. The question is going to be, who is Dak Prescott really, which is a question I don't know the answer to.
And he's basically been given every opportunity to succeed next year. He's got Zeke back. He's got that offensive line. He's got the trust of Jerry Jones. He's going to have most likely his coach back that he had last season. Everything is in place for him to go back and have the same year he had 2 years ago. Now it's about whether he goes out and does it.
But the one thing you guys haven't taken into account that those 2 years, there's over 30 games of NFL film on Dak. All right, so that what people didn't know in the first year, now they do know. And if Dallas doesn't make some adjustments, I don't believe next year is a make or break year for Dak. He's still a very, very young player. Like, Dak doesn't have to play Pro Bowl level for me next year to say, you know something? Hey, guys, I'm off of it. Like, he could still go up and down for the next couple years. It is a hard game. It's a hard position to learn. And just because you have success early, that does not beget you success year 2, 3, and 4. It's a very important year for Dak. But to me, it's not a make or break year for him.
But didn't we all come down on Marcus Mariota for not progressing in the third year? Don't we take a lot of guys and say
Jameis
the third
Winston.
year? Yeah, the third year is when you really should break out.
Yeah, most of the people are upset, too, because they had predicted that. And then when they're wrong, they make the player look wrong. But the development of players, a lot of times, there's no book. Like, the biggest jump in a player is year 1 to year 2. That didn't happen for Dak. But there's no way There's no situation where you don't learn more football than the NFL than you do from year 1 to year 2.
And that's what, to use the Mariota-Winston comparison, that's why year 3 for them was disappointing. It wasn't just because people got it wrong. It was because you saw them make significant strides year 1 to year 2. So people, I think, rightly anticipated, okay, year 3 they're going to be even better. Now with Mariota, we found out he was dealing with an injury throughout the year. We'll see how much that actually played into it. I don't know what happened with Jameis. What I do know is this, like, Dak can't, it may or may not be a make or break year, but what he can't do is regress from where he was in year 2. You can't have back-to-back years of regression, right? Like year 1 is here, then year 2 here.
That's not what you want. But I leave myself open that he could have a bad year. Like, just because we think it's a must year for him, it doesn't always play out that way. What if he gets nicked early? What if they don't make any changes? What happens? He's still, just like Marcus Mariota, you know when they start next year, what's going to happen? Even though he had a disappointing year, he's still the starting quarterback there. Jameis Winston, you know what's going to happen in Tampa? He's still the starting quarterback there. They're still in the process of developing. You don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. You continue to groom the baby.
All right, here we go. Let's move on to Kyrie Irving, who was traded to Boston before this season. However you want to term it, he asked, he demanded, he forced his way out. He left Cleveland. But we're now learning the lengths he went to get out of Cleveland. According to a report, Kyrie threatened to sit out training camp and threatened to have knee surgery during the season in order to force the team to trade him. CeCe, what was your reaction to the latest Kyrie news?
I thought this was awesome. I was like, wow, I can't wait to see Nick's face. Like, this is going to be very, very this is like a subject we had yesterday that was a subject that ended up being a debate over the steroids. I said, I know this is going to get him hot. So you know what, Jenna?
Yeah.
I'm going to defer to my great partner, Nick Wright. What did you think about the news coming out about Kyrie?
It's funny because the first thing I thought about was you.
Oh, God.
And one of your favorite terms, sports integrity. Where's the sports integrity? You are under a guaranteed contract for 2 more seasons. And if you want to ask for a trade, that is your right. If you want to, quote, demand, unquote, a trade, that is your right. If you want to threaten to not play, I will even listen to that, even if I have some issue with it. But to threaten to have surgery you obviously do not need. Did he have surgery this offseason? I didn't know about it.
No.
Okay, he's on some people's MVP ballots, right? We're going to have Chris Mannix on in a couple hours. He's going to talk about his best point guard in the Eastern Conference. He looks perfectly healthy. People are like, oh, why didn't the Cavs just hold the fort? Why didn't the Cavs do what LaMarcus Aldridge did? Or what the Spurs did with LaMarcus Aldridge, I should say. Well, if you've got a guy threatening to submarine your year, submarine what could be your last best chance to win a title, if LeBron's leaving, it's unconscionable. Like there is no matter what color Celtic green pajamas you wear to bed, you cannot defend a guy who says, I am going to have a surgery I don't need to miss the season if you don't do what I want. It is the professional athlete version of, I will take my ball and go home, and it's ridiculous from one of the NBA's best players.
Okay, I agree. The lengths he went to here were ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. But could you understand where he's coming from as far as the frustration mounting that he felt like he had no control? He was playing. He thought he was contributing to the team. He thought this was his team. And then he hears that, oh, wait a minute, I'm getting traded to Phoenix? You don't want me? Like, you have to understand, and maybe you can explain it better. As a player, you feel like you're playing for one thing, and then you hear that this team doesn't want you anymore.
Kyrie didn't know that trades happened?
That is unconscionable. I understand threatening a knee surgery. I'm just asking if you can understand where his mindset was.
No. I really don't. Now, as a professional, I know that he didn't think that he wasn't tradable. But there was problems with Kyrie and the Cavs before that. So it's not as if, like, Kyrie was very, very happy. Kyrie has been a lot of maintenance his whole career. All right, people don't want to talk about that. Like, he's been a lot of maintenance, but it was nice to see that LeBron went to extremes to try to make him comfortable. Because it really changed the narrative, because everything that happens in Cleveland around LeBron is LeBron's fault. The coach can't coach, LeBron's the general manager, all that. But you could see LeBron did everything that he could do to keep Kyrie there. So for me, it throws shade at Kyrie and whatever you think about him. Now, this is the reality, all right? He acted a little spoiled, acted like a kid compared to a professional. So, no, I don't understand that, because his money's guaranteed no matter what. Going into this last season with LeBron, though, given the only success Kyrie's had has been with LeBron. Yeah, he was a great scorer, but their team was terrible. So he wasn't one of the most prominent NBA players until LeBron came back home.
And when it comes to them considering trading him, you have to, A, consider the factor of they thought they were getting one all-star level player and one near all-star level player in Paul George and Eric Bledsoe, but also the context of they knew that in the year prior, Kyrie had called one of LeBron's business partners, or Kyrie's father had called one of LeBron's business partners the enemy. Mm-hmm. Kyrie at practice was refusing to push the ball up the court because he said it's LeBron's job to get other people involved. You act like that, your name's going to come up in trade rumors. But this is the lengths to which that I can't remember a player going. Carson Palmer, if I may cross sports for a moment, he wanted to get out of Cincinnati so badly. He said, I'll retire. Yes. I just won't play football anymore, and ended up forcing their hand in trading him. At least there was some dignity to that. At least he said, this is my line in the sand. This is a dangerous sport, a violent sport. I'm not happy. I would rather not play.
And they didn't have success. It wasn't like he put a bunch of, Boy Scouts around him. It was a lot of the environment with the team, the organization, all those things. Lack of resources they were spending on people, which led to Carson's decision.
But he was also honest.
Yes.
Everyone knew what he was doing. If we remember the context, and I know we have very short memories, but if we can just go back to this summer, Kyrie was livid that the news that he demanded the trade leaked. So obviously, if he would have gone down this path, he would have been even more livid if people said, he didn't need this knee surgery. And by the way, it is the type of thing, can you imagine if the Cavs didn't trade Kyrie and Kyrie has this knee surgery? Can you imagine if someone went on television and said, I heard he didn't need the surgery, that he was doing this just as a bleep you to the team? It would sound so farcical it wouldn't be believed.
Yeah, that person probably lose their job.
Right. You know what I mean? Like, yes. It would be like, you cannot accuse someone of that. What an indictment of who they are as a person and as an athlete. And by the way, while Kyrie's camp didn't confirm this, they also didn't deny it. It was not, in the article in Cleveland.com, it was a big no comment. So I don't know how you can square the circle of what Kyrie claimed to be the day the finals ended, his adoration for LeBron, his excitement on continuing to move forward with the team, and then within a few months saying, if you do not trade me, I'm going to sit out for the year with a knee surgery I don't need. It's unbelievable.
Well, we assume he doesn't need it because he didn't get it, right? We don't know that. The same way we don't know whether Kevin Love was really sick or not. We don't know.
I do know it. I watch him play every night.
It just feels like this year in the NBA, yes, while that seems like an extreme measure, the antics are crazy. The stupid things Kevin Durant has done and said, the ridiculous things.
Those are apples and bowling balls.
If you're going to compare Carson Palmer, then I can compare some of the other things.
Wait a second. Carson Palmer decided to do something with Kyrie Irving, which is very, very rare. Now, we haven't seen that. Now, Kevin Durant, what he did, will sit alone in a vacuum by itself. But also, this is our first time covering the NBA like this. To me, a lot of this stuff is not new. It's just that we've put a microscope on it because the NBA is very, very popular right now.
Sure.
So I'm not shocked by these things about the NBA. Now, the Kyrie thing, I believe things have happened like that before. They just didn't get out.
Okay. Well, that's something that maybe this isn't the first time something like that's happened. It's just this.
It still doesn't make it right.
It does not make it right. But this is the year of the leak. But if the end result for Carson Palmer is, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to play unless you. Kyrie's basically saying the same thing. What either I retire or I get
paid. Except he wasn't going to retire. He was going to sit back and collect.
Carson was going to retire, forfeit his guarantee.
Forfeit his money.
It's
That's
huge.
a huge difference. He's going to sit back and collect $20 million.
Or sabotage the team.
To not play. and when you say we don't know if he needs it or not, I watch the Celtics every game they play.
We watched them opening night.
Kyrie Irving's not injured. Now, I'm sure there are a lot of NBA players that at the end of seasons get maintenance, get things done.
The only thing that Kyrie was injured was his pride. And there's no need for us to try to sit here to try to defend his pride because his feelings were hurt. All right? We're all professional people. How he reacted is not becoming of a professional athlete, especially with someone.
Correct. Well, yeah, I agree with you. The knee surgery is off the charts. But if you want to talk about hurting your pride, every night Russell Westbrook had his pride hurt, so he went out and scored 46 points. This is not necessarily just a pride thing. The measures he went to were extreme and ridiculous.
But the measures are the whole story. If your bigger point is that NBA players are more emo or millennial than we see in other sports, and this year it seems to be on steroids.
That's a good point.
Then I agree with you. But this story, again, I just want before we step aside, I just want America to imagine if this story didn't come out and I went on TV today and said, I heard Kyrie Irving threatened to sit out the year with a knee surgery he didn't need, the reaction would be, that is laughable and insane. And so, GordonCleveland.com, that's what happened.
New topic. The Cavs are hoping to get back on track tonight. Any night, really. In fact, pick a day that ends in Y, and that's a day when the Cavs need to get back on track. Cavs hosting the Pacers. Ty Lue promised to make changes to this lineup, and he did just that. Tristan Thompson will start. Jay Crowder will come off the bench, and Kevin Love moves back to power forward. Nick, what do you think? Do these changes fix anything?
Well, this was the first of the two changes that I said Wednesday were going to happen. The other was a trade that right now has hit a snag with George Hill. But when Ty Lue said they were making a lineup change, to me, it was as obvious as could be. The lineup change.
There was only a few options as far as what they could do from a lineup change standpoint.
Well, they could have taken JR out and put D Wade in the starting
and they
lineup.
asked him that question. He said, no, not yet.
Right.
So
and that's
that was one of maybe. There was only two moves they could really make.
Crowder
and JR.
They also could have. I'm sure, but they didn't necessarily have to put Tristan in the starting lineup, is I guess the point I'm making. If they wanted to continue to play small, they could have removed Crowder and put in Jeff Green.
They are paying Tristan $15 million, aren't they?
I think a little bit more than that, actually. But yes, regardless, the point that I'm attempting to make is this gets them back to the format, if you will, that they had over the last few years, which is point guard. That's been the change. But then JR, LeBron, Kevin Love, Tristan Thompson. This changed early in the year when Tristan got hurt. They wanted to go more offense. They reeled off that great stretch with this undersized lineup. They had to make this change. Not only because Jay Crowder has played so poorly, but also because it is one thing they think will help stop the bleeding defensively. Now, it does not fix what has been the least productive backcourt of any playoff team. It doesn't adjust that at all, but this is a good move for them defensively and hopefully a move that gets Jay Crowder a shock to his system to where he plays anything close to what he was last year.
Yeah, well, basketball fans will wonder, why is it a better move defensively? Well, the way teams have attacked the Cleveland Cavaliers, when they move Kevin Love to the 5, all right, what they have done to them defensively is put them in pick and roll. They spread the other 3 players out. They put the point guard and the 5, Kevin Love, the 2 worst defenders the Cavaliers have, in pick and roll. And they have not been able to defend. They've been trying to blitz the pick and roll, trying to double team them, which always leaves someone open, so you have to rotate. So now with Tristan is better in the pick and roll defensively and offensively. That can be the number one set. Him and IT, try to get IT on the move, try to get him to the hole. Tristan is a better pick and roll than Kevin Love. So these are some of the schematics and X's and O's that they should lead to them being more successful. So when you talk about, wow, well, Tristan, what's the difference? Well, Kevin Love, now he can post up on a 4 now compared to posting up on a 5, which is a bigger guy. So Kevin Love's post game when he was playing center, it's negated. So he basically becomes a jump shooter. And also the other thing that they'll benefit from, LeBron, if he wants to post up now against the number 3s, he can do that. So they have a mismatch. LeBron posting up, Kevin Love posting up. So now they don't have to be such a perimeter-oriented basketball team.
The hang-up, though, is if JR doesn't start playing better, and there's no reason to believe he will, and if Isaiah Thomas doesn't start playing better, or at least shooting better, and there is reason to believe he will, this team all of a sudden goes from a team very reliant on the three-pointer to a team with very little shooting out there. Jay Crowder, one of the benefits to having him in the starting lineup is he was theoretically a 3-and-D guy, a guy that can hit threes and then defend well. He wasn't defending well and he wasn't hitting his threes. But even with him missing his threes, he's a threat at least. Tristan Thompson is never going to go past the three-point line. He's never even going to go close to it except for in pick-and-roll situations. So there is that drawback, but they had to change something. And I don't think you can overlook what Tristan's production, the way it's dropped, when he's not a starter. Now, he has fewer minutes, so you're like, okay, some of his production is going to drop, but his rebounding's been cut in half. He got that contract by being the best offensive rebounder in the sport. He also was a guy that took a lot of pride in, if you remember, he had the NBA's longest consecutive games played and started streak dating back to last season. Last season, he got injured. He had to break the streak. This year, he lost his starting spot. It seemed to have sapped some of his mojo, if you will. I don't have a metric for it.
He was a high-energy player. He was an emotional, he was an effort guy. And we haven't seen that since he got injured and or went to the bench, which happened at the same time. So how did that affect him? What's affected him on the court? He is not that kind of guy yet, but he's getting healthier. He's getting in better shape. That's what Ty Lue talked about. Right. He wasn't in the type of conditioning that he could play with that high energy.
Was Kevin Love playing the 4 when the Cavs ripped off that 19-2 stretch?
No, he was playing the 5. He was playing center. When they were, the lineup they had been going with was point guard to be determined from Rose to Calderon to IT, J.R. Smith, LeBron at the 3. I'm sorry, Jay Crowder at 3, LeBron at the 4, Kevin Love at the 5. But also that. So, no, that was one of the reasons why I think they didn't, when Tristan got healthy, they didn't go back to him. Like Tristan got
working.
Because it was, at least in the time frame, it was working. But they also, we can't overlook how bad the backcourt's been. Like, we just can't. Like, I know you think I'm hesitant to criticize JR because I like JR, but we're halfway through the season. That? Well, I don't know. You've kind of created this narrative that I won't criticize JR. Last year, I fairly gave him the benefit of the doubt because people were ignoring the fact that his wife and baby child were in the hospital for 2 months, and I thought that would pull on anyone. This year, there's no real... His family's healthy. He's healthy. He should be playing better. I gave him a few weeks to try to get his legs under him. It hasn't happened. The shooting guard position for the Cavs has been disastrous. The point guard position, which last year was obviously the second best spot on their team, Derrick Rose was terrible. Calderon is not really a rotation player anymore, and now they're trying to work IT back into it. Like, the backcourt for the Cavs has been, I would say, their biggest problem, but Jay Crowder's the one that is going to go to the bench right now. Now that the NBA season is heating up, I wanted to talk about another podcast we do at Fox Sports, and that's Chris Broussard's In the Zone. Each week, Chris breaks down what's trending in the NBA and the biggest names in the league. Previous guests include Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Shaq, John Wall, and myself. So if you love the NBA, make sure to subscribe to In the Zone wherever you get your podcasts.
It is always a good time on the program when Chris Mannix joins us.
What up, Mannix? How are you,
There aren't
sir?
many people that can come on and stand up and say, Nick, let's go toe-to-toe.
I mean, the whole thing.
Basketball.
Mannix is has a little bit of a Baghdad Bob aspect to him when it comes to the Boston Celtics. So it's good to have some counterbalance on the show.
I just came, during the break, I came out and said, "Who's excited for the finals preview tomorrow? Celtics Warriors in Oakland."
Nick
I mean, it's
fell
big.
off his chair.
I love you so much, Mannix.
All right,
Tune in.
Let's dive in. The Golden State Warriors started the season as the favorites to win the NBA title 3 months in, and the Golden State Warriors are the favorites to win the NBA title. Steph, Clay, Durant combined to drill 18 threes last night in a win against the T-Wolves. The defending champs are 39-10, best record in the league. Chris, can anyone in the NBA, maybe I should ask you the West, but what do you think, beat the Warriors in the playoffs, the way they're playing right now?
No, look, as bullish as I am on Boston, I would never suggest that Boston or anybody in the East can beat Golden State. And as much as I like Houston, and I frankly think that Oklahoma City has truly emerged as a threat in the Western Conference, the way they've played over the last month, you have to look at the Warriors and say, can anybody beat them 4 out of 7? And I think you can make a reasonable argument that this is the best Warriors team in the last 3 years, just because of Kevin Durant's comfort with this group.
Yes.
The fact that some of these younger guys starting to emerge, Jordan Bell in the mix, by the postseason this year.
More athletic.
Another rotation player you add. These guys, they may not win 70-plus games, but they are so comfortable playing together that when they get to the postseason, I think they're going to be the same almost impossible team to beat.
Yes, unless they have an injury. And also, Durant's been empowered. The finals MVP, finally being the champion. And if you look at the only success he's had against LeBron has been since he's gone to Golden State. I mean, the record was totally lopsided. So from a psychological standpoint, they match up with everyone very well. So the overall continuity, you mentioned they have a couple situational players that makes them more athletic than they have been. So this Golden State team, man, I don't see anyone beating them. I think they're going to win in the finals because Kevin Durant's ability to be able to take over games and take over moments in games, it's a huge difference between just Steph, Clay, and Draymond. When you add Kevin Durant, his ability also to protect the rim. We always wondered, man, they're going small. They're not going to. Man, we didn't know that this great defender in Kevin Durant was inside of that body. That combination right there makes Golden State really special.
All right, so I want to say 2 things that I think are givens. One, we all agree that if some injury happens, that changes everything. So we're assuming full health for everybody across the league. 2, we all agree the Warriors are the favorites. They are literally the Vegas favorites, and we all agree they should be the favorites.
Yeah, we believe they're the best, too. There's a difference between being favorite and being the absolute best.
Right. I think we all agree on all 3 of those points. I think Houston absolutely can beat them. I think Houston can beat them 4 out of 7. They would be the underdog to do so. It would take Houston to play its best basketball. But there's 2 things that I think work particularly in Houston's favor. One is just the variance of the way they play. When you shoot as many three-pointers as Houston does, if you catch fire for 2 games in a 7-game series, you can steal 2 you weren't supposed to steal. Then you got to win 2 other ones. And the other thing that works in Houston's favor, I think, is we do have to recognize Houston this year is yet to lose a game that Harden, Paul, and Capella play start to finish. Like, I think it's now they're 16-0 in the. It's not a tiny sample size. It's not an enormous one either. But Houston has. It's weird to say this because they don't have anyone on their team that's won a championship, anyone of note. But what they do have, I think, is big game experience throughout the roster. Now, some of that experience is bad experience for Chris Paul and James Harden, but I don't think a moment will be too big for either of those guys. Chris Paul, to me, seems to relish the opportunity going up against Steph Curry, who, as crazy as people believe it, or think this sounds, Chris Paul believes he's better than Steph Curry and has always believed it. And Harden is the best player in the league that's not on the Warriors or the Cavs. So for all those reasons, I think the Rockets have a legitimate shot in this.
I would agree with that. And one thing I would add is that at one point in December, people kind of woke up and looked at the defensive ratings, and suddenly Houston was inside the top 10. And Mike D'Antoni's often said, if we're a top 15 team defensively, we're a true playoff contender. Yeah. If we're a top 10 defensive team, we're a title contender. And Chris Paul was the big offseason acquisition, right? Everybody talked about Chris Paul. The difference makers, though, for the Rockets this year have been Capella and his development this season. Luke Mbah a Moute coming in and being a wing defender. P.J. Tucker coming in and being a wing defender. Look, the Rockets have always been able to score. Chris Paul, no Chris Paul, they would be able to score with James Harden. Where they have struggled is getting stops. And those guys in the lineup are going to be difference-making type of defensive players against the Golden State. Mbah a Moute on Durant, P.J. Tucker mixing and matching on different guys. If those guys are healthy, that series suddenly becomes a dogfight.
Yeah, I believe that's a great series. The one thing, though, you do have to understand with Chris Paul and with Harden, they don't have great success together. Like, they've had some failures together. And to me, that would be at the forefront of my mind. And emotionally. Look at what happened with Chris Paul, Ariza, and them going to the locker room. Like, you're going to get in some heated exchanges. All right? When you play the Warriors, that 2-week time, if you're distracted, you're not going to be able to defeat them. So for me, I just wonder, or do they have the grit? Do they have that inward, that confidence inside to be able to, in a 7-game series, to be able to win Game 7 in Golden State, which we know it just takes special stuff to do. And when you've never seen it done, I believe it is an argument that we should have before they face each other.
And they beat them twice already this year. Not that the Warriors are concerned. The Warriors had a really easy time, I would say, last year skating through to the finals. Do you factor and fold the Rockets into what it's going to take this year, or is it going to be equally easy?
Well, that's what I think is critical.
Yes, in the West.
One of the reasons the Warriors were able to beat the Cavs in 5 was because they had swept their previous 3 series. Like the amount of rest and the amount of the lack of chances to turn an ankle, to have an injury by playing fewer games. So when we're talking about can the Rockets beat the Warriors, you know who's going to have a lot to say about that? The Spurs or the Timberwolves or the Thunder, whomever the Warriors play in the second round. Because I think the Warriors beat all those teams. But if one of those teams can take them to 6, make them work a little bit, like then all of a sudden the degree of difficulty gets much higher. And same on the flip side. If the Rockets need 7 games in the second round, their chances of beating the Warriors in round 3 goes down dramatically. Like that rest inside the playoff bracket is enormous, at least in my eyes.
I agree with you. And look, the second round matchup, let's say Oklahoma City winds up in that 4 seed. Like, that second round matchup's going to be a street fight. That is going to be a street fight because, and I said it top the top briefly, but you can't sleep on what Oklahoma City's doing right now, largely because Carmelo Anthony, for the second time this season, has evolved his game, adapted his game. He came in and said, look, I'm okay being a power forward, which he never said when he was in New York. And over the last month, he said, look, I'm okay being a spot-up shooter, which he's never said before. If he continues to accept that type of role and this team continues to grow, they were already, start of the season, Oklahoma City, a top 5 level defensive team.
Yes.
Their offensive numbers have improved incrementally over the last month. If that's a second round matchup, I think that's at least a 6-game series, maybe 7.
Wow.
I'm Jenna Wolf, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long, everyone.